Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So this is going to be my Scream VI spoiler video. So again, this video is going to contain spoilers. Just a heads up, this is your fair warning. If you have not seen the movie, stay away from the video. Once you have seen the film, come back and watch. Otherwise, if you don't care about spoilers, then we'll go ahead and just dive into things right here. But again, this will contain spoilers. We're going to talk about some Easter eggs, just my thoughts on a couple different things. And yeah, well, let's go ahead and get this thing started because it's going to be a long video. So one of the things that the Scream franchise has become really well known for over the years is the opening sequence. We're always curious to see what they're going to do with the opening and how they're going to top some of the previous films, or at least attempt to. So this time around, we have Samara Weaving's character. She's at a bar, she's waiting for a date to show up, and I kind of had a feeling going into the movie that she was probably going to be the opening kill because you didn't really see her in a lot of the promotion, barely in the trailer or anything like that. So I was like, yeah, she's probably going to be the opening kill. So you find out that she's a college professor, and it's really cool because she teaches slashers. So you get a little bit of back and forth with her and the person that's supposed to be her date about that. He ends up tricking her to go outside because he's saying he's lost and to get her go into this dark alley. And then that's when we get the Ghostface attack. He goes after her, ends up stabbing her several times, and right from the get-go, just the way that he stabs her, I was like, yeah, this is definitely a little bit more of a meaner Ghostface this time around. So he ends up killing her. When he kills her, though, we end up getting Ghostface revealing himself, takes off his mask, and the first time watching this, I was like, wait, what's going on? Are we going to know who Ghostface is for the rest of the film, and our main characters just won't know that until the very end? I thought maybe they were going to take that approach. That would definitely be the first time for doing that. I also thought of, because a theory that I had going into the movie, there was a lot of talk of, a Ghostface cult. So I thought maybe that's what they're going to do, and we'll get a little bit more into that as we get into this video too. So he ends up taking off the mask, stashing everything away, just leaves the body and walks away. And as he's walking away, his name's Jason, I believe, runs into Tara. She's walking with a couple friends. They're going to a party and, ask if he's going to be at the party. And he goes, oh, is your sister going to be there? She says no. He says, all right, I'm going to try and be down there, with my roommate if he's able to finish his homework. So then Jason goes up to his apartment, and it's really funny because he goes into his apartment and we see that Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan is playing on the TV. So a nice little Easter egg there. I mean, it would have been kind of weird or a missed opportunity if they didn't have some kind of Easter egg for Jason Takes Manhattan in this movie. So I'm glad that they were able to put that in there for sure. And then the fact that the guy's name is Jason too. So that was really nice. So he ends up getting a call, and we think, it's the roommate initially, but then you pick up and you get the Ghostface voice. And he thinks he's just kind of playing around with the voice modulator because both of them are trying to finish Richie's movie. But as this person starts talking to him more and more, you find out that it's like, okay, this is definitely not his roommate. It's someone else who's Ghostface. He ends up finding his roommate inside the refrigerator, and then the real Ghostface ends up showing up behind him, stabs the shit out of him. You end up seeing, guts and stuff starting to come out of his stomach, and he falls down. And we get probably one of my favorite Ghostface lines that we have had in a little while, where he goes, who gives a fuck about the movies? I've seen the movie a couple times now, and just each time he delivers that, so badass. Can't say enough about Roger L. Jackson in this film. I mean, throughout the Scream franchise, he's been in every single movie. Without that voice, I don't know, man. Like, I know people say they can do like AI and they could get someone else to maybe do the voice, but I don't think so, man. He is Scream. Like, if we didn't have Roger L. Jackson, I don't know if they would be able to make another Scream movie. It wouldn't feel the same without having that voice behind the character of Ghostface. So it gives a great opening, and that's how the film kicks off. And that kind of ties into 5 because, he said that we're trying to finish Richie's film. You remember from part 5 that those two Ghostfaces, they met on a screen or a stab message board. And so I have a feeling that this isn't going to be the last case that we see of this Ghostface cult or just Ghostface, inspired stab fans. I imagine those aren't the only two people that were out there that were probably inspired by this. So I wonder if that's going to be something that kind of carries over into part 7. Then we get Sam is at her therapist's trying to deal with what happened with the events of Scream V. She starts talking to the therapist, and he goes, he wants her to be more open about her past and, get into specifics about certain things. And so Sam goes, okay, what happened with your boyfriend? Oh, I found out he was a serial killer. I had to stop him. How did you stop him? I ended up stabbing him 22, 23 times, and then I slit his throat. And just the look on the therapist is like, oh shit, like I am way over my head. You can tell it freaks him out, and he's like, yeah, I'm not equipped to be able to help you with this. So they just kind of hints further at exploring Sam's dark side. Is that something? And we'll get a little bit more into that later on in the video too, but is she going to go, dark? Is she going to become Ghostface maybe at some point? Who knows? A nice little Easter egg that I liked in this scene, which I didn't catch initially, but I think it was like the second or third time around. You see these little Addams Family dolls on the therapist's desk. So, as a reference to Jenna Ortega's character, Wednesday, in the Addams Family-based show on Netflix. So I thought that was, a nice little Easter egg there. And then you also find out that there is a rumor that's been going around since the events of Part 5 that it was actually Richie was framed and Sam was behind the killings in Woodsboro. So I actually really like that aspect of the movie. I thought that was an interesting choice, and it just makes sense. I mean, someone starts some bullshit rumor and it just spreads all over online. It happens all the time in today's world, so I really like that they decided to explore that part here in Scream VI. And then after that, we end up meeting up with the rest of our cast. They're having a party, it's like this frat party thing that they're at, and this one guy is trying to take advantage of Tara at the party, and eventually Sam ends up showing up, tases him in the balls, and that every time that I've seen that, that's got a good reaction out of the crowd. I thought it was hilarious, but I was like, oh my god. So after this happens, you have Tara and Sam. They end up having this conversation, this confrontation outside about what just happened, because obviously where Sam showed up out of nowhere and did this to a guy that she was talking to, she felt embarrassed, and she just tells Sam that she feels smothered by her, ever since that she's come to New York. Tara's just trying to get her college education, and she feels like Sam really needs to let her go, and that'll be explored more later on. But I really liked that addition to this movie as well. We got to focus a little bit more on the relationship of these two sisters, and Sam just feels, she's trying to protect her sister, so that's why she's there. So I liked, and that's just a realistic exploration of a sibling dynamic, so I appreciated that addition to this movie too. But then right after the conversation between those two, you have this random girl that's walking by. She takes her drink of soda and just throws it all over Sam and calls her a killer. And obviously Sam gets pissed. I mean, I would too if some random person walking by just threw their soda on me. I was like, you know what, Sam? Go ahead and fuck that girl up. Want to believe these stupid conspiracy things online. I was like, go get her. Obviously, they didn't get a chance to do that. Her friends were kind of holding her back, but I was like, yeah, that's a bunch of bullshit. After that happens, we go back to the apartment building where they're living at, and you find out that Sam is actually seeing the cute guy, Danny, as they refer to him in the movie, from across the apartment buildings. You end up finding out that they're actually dating. They're just trying to hide it because they don't, or mainly Sam doesn't want everyone to know that she's in a relationship at this moment, just because of what happened, previously. And then Chad from upstairs, he tells Sam to come up because something's happening. We also, at this time, we find out that something is going on between Chad and Tara as well. So Sam ends up going upstairs with Danny, and you see on the news that the bodies of Jason and his roommate were discovered, and immediately Sam's like, yep, time to get the fuck out of here. We gotta go. Tara's like, no, wait, I'm not just gonna throw away my education because of some random murder in New York. But Sam's smart and realizes that, this probably has something to do with us. And sure enough, they end up having one of their roommates, Quinn, calling her father because she's the detective in this movie, calls her father and, ask about what's going on. Is this something that we need to worry about? And then you see that Sam's license is at the scene of the crime, and he's like, yeah, actually, I need you guys to come down to the police station, and that's when we get the bodega scene. The bodega scene, definitely one of my favorite set pieces in the whole entire movie. I thought it was cool. I know some people were a little worried about Ghostface having the shotgun there in the bodega, but I kind of thought where it was just for that specific scene, I thought that was a nice addition just to kind of switch things up. And the fact that Ghostface just goes into this bodega, doesn't give a fuck who's in there, and just starts stabbing people left and right. Again, it just adds to the fact where it's like, yeah, this is a different kind of Ghostface that we haven't really seen do that before to this level. So I really like that whole scene, how that played out. So after that happens, they get away, we get to the police station, and this is where we first see Kirby gets reintroduced. So she's part of the FBI now, so it was really nice to see her come back. I know that, got a reaction out of me, was definitely one of my favorite characters out of Scream 4. So it's nice to see her. They end up going into this other room where they have pictures of all the previous Ghostfaces, and we find out that the killer this time around is leaving Ghostface mask of the previous killers. And so they go through a couple of them that we've gotten so far, and you see on the wall, because I've seen some people kind of have questions on what this means. So goes all the way down. We get down to Stu and Billy. Now it says underneath them, underneath Stu specifically, it says dead 1996. But then also next to him, there's a question mark. I've seen some people saying like, oh, that could be, they're not sure if he's dead. I'm pretty sure what they meant at that specific moment was they just hadn't found the location of Stu's mask up to that point, where they had found some of the other ones, like the specific locations of where they found them. So I believe that's what they were going for there, but we'll get more into the Stu stuff in a little bit. So Sam and Tara, they're getting ready to leave the police station, and the Scream theme song, or at least sounds very similar to what the Scream theme song was from the earlier movies. It hits as they're leaving the doors. You get all these reporters out there, and I just got chills instantly because it reminded me of those early Scream movies. So that was definitely a hit of nostalgia for me. I really like that. And then with the reporters out there, we see Gail pops up, and she goes to ask the sisters, do you think you coming to New York has brought Ghostface there? Sam tries to punch her. She dodges it, and she's like, oh, this isn't the first time, or isn't my first rodeo. And so she misses, but then Tara swings and punches Gail in the face. Just a throwback and an Easter egg to the original Scream films where Sidney did that to Gail a number of different times. So that got a pretty good reaction out of the theater every time that I've seen the movie as well. So I thought that was pretty funny. After that, then we get Sam's therapist gets a visit from Ghostface. Now, initially, the way that the trailer was cut, I almost thought that Ghostface showing up where you see that, the scene in the trailer where shows up in the glass window and you see his mask just press against the window. I thought that was maybe visiting like the apartment where the character's at or house or something, but no, it's actually visiting Sam's therapist. Nice little horror movie Easter egg nod. He's watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original version. Now, the only reason I know this, I looked it up afterwards because I had seen at least that clip of that particular scene in a number of other shows, movies, so I knew where it was generally from. But I have never seen the original version of that film. I know I'm a big horror fan, so some of you guys are like, how can you be a horror fan? You haven't seen that movie. So sorry. But I'm planning on watching that this year because I've heard nothing but good things. I've heard, it's a classic, so it's something that I definitely want to check out to add to my horror repertoire. So I'm planning on watching that this year. But yeah, the therapist, so he ends up going to the door and he says, oh, trick-or-treating's, tomorrow or the day after. And then Ghostface just grabs him, smashes his face against the door, and then takes a knife and stabs him right through the nose. And I was like, ooh, that's gotta hurt. He falls on the ground, Ghostface comes in, and then he grabs Sam's files from the cabinet. We then get the scene of Mindy explaining the rules to our new cast of characters, returning characters as well, although it's different this time because this isn't just a normal sequel, now we are in a franchise, so anything can happen, different characters can die. I'm always a sucker for the rule scenes. Randy was one of my favorite characters. I was so sad when he died in Scream 2, so I've always really appreciated the rule scenes, and this one's no exception. I thought that she did a really good job delivering that. And to add on top of it, just a lot of vibes from Scream 2, and you'll see that a lot throughout this film. I wouldn't say it's a complete remake of Part 2, but there's definitely a lot of heavy influences from the second film in this one. This scene in particular, you also get Red Right Hand that shows up again, so all of that, another one of my highlights of the film for sure. I love this scene. After that, we end up going back to the apartment where Sam ends up finding out that she is the prime suspect in the murders that are happening now. You can obviously tell that she's upset. She shuts off the TV, goes over to the table, has a conversation with her sister, and we get, again, one of my favorite moments in the movie, and it's not even like an action set piece or anything like that. It's just this really nice moment that you get this conversation between Tara talking to Sam, and she's like, hey, I know I've kind of been a shithead the way that I've been giving you shit for, you know, being all over me and trying to protect me and smothering me a little bit, but I know that none of us can understand what you're going through with all these rumors and this bullshit. You also have Mindy and Chad that come over, and it's just this moment that really solidifies these guys' relationships with each other. And then Chad ends up referring to them as the core four, which is something that goes throughout the film. But just one of those nice, quiet moments between the characters that I really appreciated and just added a lot to that for this, you know, for this film. And specifically, it made me care about these characters a lot more. But of course, we get this nice moment, but it doesn't last for too long. So Danny, who's across apartment buildings, ends up seeing Ghostface in Quinn's room. So he's trying to get Sam's attention, the rest of the group as well, but the window's shut. They can't hear anything. He's trying to get their attention. Finally, he ends up texting them a picture of Ghostface, who has Quinn in a room. These guys, they're like, oh shit, we gotta go. So they get up. Ghostface ends up coming out. You see Quinn gets thrown. She's covered in blood. I was like, well, she's dead. And then goes after, slashes Mindy. And then Annika, who's trying to save her girlfriend, Mindy, Ghostface goes after her, picks her up, slams her against the wall, and then just takes a knife, stabs it into her, but really gets in there, you know, twists it around, and I was like, ooh, shit, yeah, that has gotta hurt. That's when we get the ladder scene that you might have seen if you've seen the trailers for the movie, where the characters are going across the ladder trying to get to Danny's room. And as someone who's not exactly the biggest fan of heights, specifically where they show the moment where Sam looks down and you see the ground below, yeah, fuck that. I'd be like, all right, Ghostface, well, I guess I'm going to die because I'm not going to be able to make it over there. So I don't blame those characters for struggling when they're going across, you know, going kind of slowly, because I understand some people are probably like, hurry up, go across. But I would be like, yep, I am so fucking scared right now. So Sam gets across. Then Mindy decides to go across because her girlfriend says she can't do it. So she's like, all right, I'll go across and then we'll get you over afterwards. She starts going, and then Ghostface gets into the room, grabs the ladder. They end up, you know, having a back and forth. And then she ends up getting flipped off the ladder, flies. Not only is she flying down, I thought she was going to hit just the pavement itself, she would be dead. But no, she ends up hitting a trash can or garbage disposal, ends up hitting that, smashes her head off, and then lands on the ground. And we see it. I was like, damn, what a bad way to go. So she's dead, and pretty emotional moment because you see the reaction from the characters' faces watching from the other window there too. So after these events, we have Chad and Mindy. They immediately suspect Ethan is Ghostface because he shows up right, the next day, and Chad is not having it. He takes him, throws him against the cop car, and he's like, no, it wasn't me, I swear. I was in a class last night. There was like 100 other people there. You can ask any one of them. And so, they kind of let him go for the time being, but, still have him high on the suspect list. And then you see Quinn's father. He obviously saw what happened to his daughter, and so he's crying. Sam and Tara go over, and he's like, I've lost all of my family. I want to kill this guy. And I'm trying to remember the specific line that he delivers. He's like, you mess with my family, you must die. Something like that. And just the way, there's a couple moments in this movie with the detective specifically, that the way that he delivered the lines, and I mentioned it in my non-spoiler review that I think they were going for the cheese. At least I hope they were, because otherwise it just came across as incredibly cheesy. There was a couple moments like that I kind of had to giggle a little bit. I was like, oh, dude, that was bad. And then Gail and Kirby shows up, and this is when we get the Ghostface shrine scene. Another one of my favorite set pieces in the film. I know I keep saying that, but there's several different ones in the movie. So we get in there, and then you just see all of the shit from all the previous stab movies or Scream films for us. You see things like Stu's robe. You see the TV that fell on his head. You see the phone or the fax machine, I believe, from part 3. You see a couple things from Dewey in there. The knife that stabbed Kirby. All kinds of different stuff in there. I believe, and I haven't seen it the couple times that I have seen it. So next time I go in, I'm gonna have to look specifically for that because I believe I saw the director say that there's like part of the garage that killed Tatum in there at some point. Again, I missed it because there's just so much shit in there you're looking around. Just in that scene alone, I wonder how many Easter eggs are just in that specific sequence because there's definitely a shit ton in there for sure. But I love the setup. Again, it also kind of reminds me of Scream 2, where in the beginning of the movie, you have a movie theater, you know, where the first killings take place, but then toward the end of the film, you also have the final act takes place in a theater too. So I like that we're able to get this in an old school looking movie theater. Thought it looked great. And at one point, Sam ends up going up to the case where Billy's costume is in, and she gets another flashback from her father. She's talking to him, and she ends up putting her hand on the glass. And Tara sees that, walks over, and just kind of looks at her. It's like, "What are you doing?" And just kind of has this really suspicious look on her face. I mean, I was kind of too. I'm like, it's a little weird, just putting your hand on a case that, you know, of your father who was a serial killer. So again, just kind of hinting at her possible dive into darkness that she might go, you know, in part 7 or you know, future wise. And then we get one of my absolute favorite moments. I mentioned this in my non-spoiler review that I said there was an interaction between two characters that just made me smile like a freaking idiot in the theater. And that is the interaction between Kirby and Mindy. They start talking to each other. I believe it's Kirby that says, "Oh, that's the TV that killed Stu Macher." And Mindy goes, "That's if you believe he's really dead." And I was just sitting there, as I'm a person who I think that Stu could very well still be alive. There's a lot of reasons in this movie for me to think that even more so now, this being one of them. And it could just be them, you know, kind of nodding to the fans because there's been these theories for several years now that Stu's, you know, been alive. So they could just be kind of having fun with the fans. But I don't know, that line seemed pretty deliberately in there. So me being a Stu fan, he's one of my favorite characters, I really appreciated that. And not only is it just that line, but the fact that, and we'll get into this kind of a little bit more, as the number of characters in this movie that probably should have died because of the injuries that they sustained. It just this new trilogy of films, you know, assuming we're going to get part 7, they've kind of established that some of these characters can take a lot more of a beating than what we maybe thought in some of the previous films. And so to me, honestly, I don't think it's really that far-fetched to think that Stu could have survived the original movie after seeing some of the injuries that these characters take. I'm just saying. But then you also have Kirby and Mindy. They have a conversation about horror movies going back and forth, you know, saying Psycho 2 is underrated. What's their favorite Friday the 13th movie? So I loved that interaction between those two characters. Then after that is done, the group, they decide to try and come up with a plan to draw Ghostface out into the open. And so you have the characters, they're out in a park. They have Tara and Sam, they're walking around, have their phone waiting, ready to go. Meanwhile, you have Kirby, Mindy and Chad, and Ethan, I believe, is like also in there. They're trying to track the phone call that they're going to get from Ghostface, and Mindy acknowledges, is like, "Oh, is this the moment where they try to track a phone call, but then the killer ends up hanging up right before they can do it?" And Kirby says, "Oh, I can track a phone call in 15 seconds. But then Mindy also acknowledges that this is exactly how her Uncle Randy died in part 2. And I was like, God damn it, I still, every time that gets me, I really wish that Randy wasn't killed off. But it's true, almost the exact same setup. So again, another reference to Scream Part 2. So I thought that was cool. And then obviously Ghostface calls, but you find out that he's one step ahead of them. He isn't in the park, and he's actually going after Gail. So you have Gail versus Ghostface. We knew this was happening. We get a little bit tease of this in the trailers. Gail finally gets her phone call with Ghostface, which is pretty crazy to think about, that this is the first time her getting her interaction with Ghostface, and it's the 6th film in the franchise. And so they have their conversation. One of my favorite things about this interaction is that Ghostface is talking to her and saying, "You would have made a great killer, Gail." And it just kind of hints that that's also been one of the fan theories for a little while now too, that one of the original, 3-4 members of the group, that they would become one of the killers, one of the Ghostfaces. So I like that was planted in there. But then Ghostface gets really mean here and has a couple digs with Dewey, saying how Gail wasn't there for him when he needed comfort, and she's never going to have a man that loved her like Dewey did. And just, you can really feel those digs here for sure. And I thought the whole action sequence when Ghostface and Gail, you know, she's running away, just that whole sequence for the most part played out really well. I thought that Courtney Cox did a great job in the scene, just moving around and having to go to all these different rooms and everything. The only part that, and I know some people giving it shit, is that the fact that at one point Gail goes into that room, gets her gun, she's in like a living closet. There's nowhere for Ghostface to get her, and she ends up coming out of that room, and then, you know, there's a number of different areas that he can pop up. Definitely a dumb decision for the character, but she does kind of make up for it afterwards, where she's talking to Ghostface. She's like, hey, can I just hold on one second? Puts him on hold, and I love the reaction of him just going, huh? Puts him on hold, and then calls the number back, so then she knows it's coming from the other closet there. So she ends up getting stabbed, and I was like, for a second, I thought that this was the end of Gail. We had Dewey get killed in part 5. I was like, oh shit, now we're going to lose Gail in part 6, because she gets stabbed a couple times, but then she goes to try and finish Ghostface, and he comes up with a piece of like wood or something and stabs her through the chest. Looks like that she's about to die, and Sam and Tara come in, see her, and she's like, I'm so sorry, I should have known that Ghostface was going to come after you. But we end up finding out that she has a faint heartbeat, and I was like, okay, she's gonna make it. Then we get another kind of quiet moment with the core 4 where they're waiting outside or inside the hospital, and they're just kind of in shock of what has happened to Gail. And you get this moment where Mindy and Chad are talking to each other. They're saying, you know, I don't want to get hurt again. I don't want to see you get hurt. They're all laying on each other. You just get this really kind of raw, emotional moment between those characters. And Sam offers up to, she's like, hey, Ghostface is after me. Why don't I just give myself up? I want to protect you guys. So just this whole moment, and they're like, no, you can't do that. You know, we're going to protect you this time around. It's just another really nice moment to add some more layers to these characters and just really solidify that relationship and the core 4 in this movie. That's why I liked all these characters in the previous film, but just those little moments, having those here in part 6, it went a long way for me, and I really appreciated that. And then after that happens, we get another one of the big set pieces of the movie, is the subway scene. And again, if you were just to kind of freeze frame this, break it down clip by clip, there is a shit ton of Easter eggs in here. I'm not going to be able to go all over them. I'd have to have the movie, because otherwise I know I'm going to forget some of them. But I'll mention some of them that I did see here for you guys. So you have Mindy and Ethan. They end up getting split up from the rest of the group. They end up getting on one train, and then Mindy and Ethan have to get on another one because there's just the crowds down there in the subway trying to get on. But when you go down there, you see all kinds of different things. You see Michael Myers, and then I don't think I noticed it initially, but you hear a group of people saying, "Evil dies tonight, evil dies tonight" from Halloween Kills. So I thought that was really funny because a lot of people hated that in that movie. But then there's Jason, there's Freddy, there's Pinhead, there's Ready or Not, there's The Shining. There is a shit ton of costumes that, you know, everyone's dressed up for Halloween, so there's all kinds of different Easter eggs in this, you know, one particular scene. But it's hard because I loved the teaser, because this was the teaser trailer that we got for the movie. So it was a great teaser, but at the same time, I almost wish I hadn't known about this going into the movie, because that would have been a really nice surprise and made it even better. But still, even knowing that going into this, once they're in the subway and it's driving, you have the lights going on and on, off and on, and then both of these groups of characters, they look up and they see that there's a number of different Ghostface in both of these cars. So, and you're like, okay, is Ghostface here? What's going on? Who knows? And they do like these nice tricks where the lights are going off and on, and you see Ghost faces, they seem to be there one second, they'll disappear, or they start moving forward, and then eventually you get the moment where the ghost face ends up coming up to Mindy, stabs her, and Ghostface really gets up in there, twisted around, stabs her. I think she gets stabbed twice, and I thought that she was going to die there, but then Ethan ends up seeing her, gets her off, says, hey, you know, she needs some help. As the paramedics, they're coming over to help her, she's like, oh no, I got it wrong again. Fuck this franchise. And just the delivery, every time that I've seen the film, I end up cracking up. Just the delivery from Jasmine Savoy Brown. I thought that she was great in this film. I liked her even more this time around. And that moment just cracked me up. The rest of the core four ends up getting off the train, and they're going with Mindy to go to the theater so they can trap Ghostface and try and kill him. When they get there, Sam goes up to her father's robe, has another hallucination of her father, and he tells her to clear out the room, not to trust anybody, so she takes the knife and goes to do that, and that's when she gets the call from the detective saying that Kirby was to get out of there because Kirby was fired from the FBI a couple months ago. Ever since the Ghostface attacks popped up again, she's been on a downward spiral. And for a second there, I was like, oh shit, are they actually going to go the route that Kirby is one of the Ghostface killers? Because I thought that could possibly be a possibility this time around. But at the same time, she's a fan favorite, so I wasn't sure if they were going to do that. So they kind of make you think that's the way that they're going to go. But I was like, well, let's wait a second. You then have Tara and Chad. They finally get their moment. They get to kiss, and of course that is short-lived because Ghostface ends up coming up right behind Tara, stabs her, and I was like, God fucking damn it. I swear to God, if Tara dies right here, gets to the very end, and she ends up getting killed off, I'm going to be pissed because I'm a big Jenna Ortega fan. But then Chad, he actually ends up getting in some pretty solid hits against Ghostface and this whole, this fight sequence between Ghostface, and he ends up getting some nice hits in there. So I was like, yeah, get him, Chad, fuck him up. So then they're being pursued by Ghostface, Sam, Tara, and Chad. And then we get the moment where Chad is going to finish off this Ghostface. Looks like he has like a gumball machine or something like that and is going to smash him over the head with it. And then another Ghostface comes out and stabs him in the side. And I was like, oh, fuck. Then you see the two Ghostfaces get up. They both grab Chad and start stabbing him on each side. And I forget how many times he gets stabbed, but it's a shit ton. The guy basically gets turned into fucking cheese. And I was like, well, shit, we're losing Chad. Just when I really grew to love his character in this movie, he's going to die. So this moment was sad because I thought we were going to lose Chad there. But at the same time, what an iconic moment where you have the two Ghostfaces. They stab them, several times. They get up, and then they both take their blade, wipe it off at the same time. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, just talking about that, I'm getting chills. And so then the Carpenter sisters, they end up getting surrounded by the two Ghostfaces. Kirby ends up popping up, though, and, shoots her gun off. Then we see the detective show up, and he's like, did you kill my daughter? And she's like, no, don't believe anything that he's told you. And then he shoots her, takes Kirby out what looks like for at least like a couple minutes. And then we find out that, so the detective, and then we get one of the Ghostface reveals is Ethan. And we find out that is actually his son. And then we get the last Ghostface reveal, which initially they say is Mindy, or one of them, I believe Tara says Mindy. And I was like, why do you assume it's Mindy? I guess because she was on the train with Ethan, possibly. Maybe that's the connection there, but otherwise I was like, it's kind of weird. But we find out it's Quinn, and I was like, wait a second. And I could hear my audience the same thing as well. It's like, she was dead. Then you find out that this was all staged. They switched out the bodies because, the detective was able to get there first. Mike from We Watched a Movie actually had a really good theory on this, that they might be setting up the idea of switching out the bodies. They could possibly use that maybe in part 7. So Mike or someone from the We Watch the Community, someone from the channel, because I was watching his live stream, they were talking about that. So I don't want to take credit for it, but that's definitely something that I could see them maybe introducing now, so then that way maybe someone like Stu could come back in a future film, kind of the same thing. Who knows? We also find out that Quinn was the one who started the rumors about Sam in the first place, and then find out that these three are actually Richie's family. So once we got that reveal, initially I was like, I want to kind of sit with this, but seeing it a second time, I mean, it totally makes sense. And again, going back to Scream 2, kind of the same thing happened there with the reveal of Billy's mother being one of the killers there, so getting revenge for her dead son. So they kind of had the same thing here, kind of a reference or a tribute to Scream 2. And I know some people are like, oh, they just repeated it, but I don't know. To me, it made sense, and I was okay with that. Granted, again, I was kind of hoping that maybe Stu was going to show up, but I was fine with the reveal this time around. The only thing that doesn't really make sense is that specifically for the scene with Gail, is that that has to be Quinn who went after her and took out her boyfriend at the time, this big muscular dude. And I don't think that's the case. And again, reference this to Mike from We Watched a Movie. He was talking about this. I really think that this is a good possibility that they could end up saying it was actually Stu that not only went after Gail, but went after Dewey in the previous film, because a lot of people complained, like, there's no way the two girls would have been able to take out these, these big dudes, and it could very well be not only that, but you have both of those characters, their original legacy members, or legacy characters, who would want to take them out, Stu. So we'll see how that plays out, but I think that'd be a nice way to kind of fix any plot holes that they had from those two films. Then we get the showdown between the Ghostface characters. You have Quinn ends up taking a brick to the face, and you see a couple of her teeth fall out. And I was like, ooh, fuck. Like, yeah, you just see a pile of teeth. I was like, yeah, nope, I'm good. I wouldn't be able to go after that. And then Sam, she ends up stabbing Ethan a number of different times. She does her little stabby thing. So gets him. You end up having Sam and Tara, they go to, try to go up to the next level, and that's in the scene in the trailer where a lot of people were thinking that maybe Tara was going to go bad because the look on her face, she's dangling off the balcony because they shoot at her, so she kind of loses her balance. And Ethan has this line where he says, "I always wanted to stick something in you, Tara," and that got a laugh out of the audience, but I thought that was kind of a reference to Stu, or it felt very Stu-like, where in the original Scream he goes, "I always had a thing for you, Sid." So I don't know, those two lines felt very similar, so I thought that was a nice little throwback, little Easter egg there. But then Tara, kind of going back to earlier on, or at the very beginning of the movie, where she tells Sam she has to let her go, she says the same thing, but this time Sam gives her the knife. When she drops down, she gets stabbed in the stomach, so it's like, God damn, Tara, between you and Chad getting stabbed a million times, it's like, you guys are just like invincible at this point. She gets stabbed, but then she takes the knife and puts it in Ethan's mouth, stabs him down the freaking throat, and then not only that, but twist it. And every time that I've seen that movie, you can just hear the people in the audience were like, ooh. So I would say probably one of the most brutal kills, or what looked like a kill shot in a Scream movie that we've ever gotten. So once Ethan's dead, then Sam says something along the lines of, ooh, looks like you lost another brother, then shoots Quinn dead straight in the head, kills her, and then all that's left is just their father. And Sam goes to shoot him, but of course she ran out of bullets. So she starts, this is one of the silly things about the movie a little bit, starts running at him, and I didn't notice it initially just because I think I was so wrapped up in the film. So she's running at him, gun's empty, doesn't really have a weapon. He has a loaded gun, and instead of shooting her, he just runs at her too. They end up falling over the balcony, and then they crash on the floor and get knocked out, or at least he gets knocked out for a longer duration than we find out that Sam does. He wakes up, he ends up, looks like he's all alone in the theater, and then he ends up getting a call from Sam, acting as Ghostface. She shows up, she's dressed up in her father's outfit, and ends up just stabbing the shit out of him, just stabbing him in his arm and everything like that. And it looks like she's about to finish him off before Tara kind of shows up behind her, looks at her, kind of gives her a look like, are you just about to murder this guy for a second? And so she stops, and he's like, oh, thank you. But then Tara, looks at her again, kind of gives her that look, and Sam goes, yeah, but you did fuck with our family. Takes a knife, puts it in his eye. That's the one thing with Scream VI. There's a lot of stabbing. I mean, that happens in every Scream movie, but specifically a lot of stabbing to the faces this time around. No one's face was safe in Scream VI. And so, really badass moment. Loved seeing Sam in the Ghostface costume. Just when she goes to town on these people as Ghostface, or even just as herself, she is a badass. I liked her character in Part 5. I know some people weren't a fan of the character then. I liked her, but man, she just completely blew me away in Part 6. I absolutely love her character. I love that she's kind of our new final girl now for this trilogy. And it's not just an exact copy of Sidney's character. She's got this darker side to her, and so I really like the direction, at least so far, where they've taken this character. So yeah, I mean, Melissa Barrera, for me, she knocked it out of the park this time around in Scream VI, so I really, really like that. So then Red Right Hand starts playing as they're walking out from behind the curtains. Again, I love that we got to see that pop up in the movie again. And the two sisters, they're having this conversation. Meanwhile, they're just talking, chatting there. And meanwhile, Kirby is over on the floor where she got stabbed a little bit ago, I forgot to mention, by Ethan. Just bleeding out, and they're just having a conversation. Hey, it's fine. You're dying. That's okay. But then we get the one last scare where Ethan gets up, and I was like, there is no fucking way in hell that you would have been able to get up after that. But he's running at them, and all of a sudden we see Stu's TV gets pushed on his head and kills him. Now, I want to comment on this because there's a lot of people out there that are saying, oh, see, and I think there was even a comment made by the directors where, and I don't have the article pulled up or anything right now, but the way that they worded it, it was meant to signify that was a death blow for that character specifically. I don't think they necessarily meant for Stu himself, because for me at least, there's a major difference between these two characters where Stu, yes, he got stabbed, he had the TV fall on him, got electrocuted or whatever, he did have his hands up, but Ethan just had a fucking knife shoved down his throat, twisted. I think that's more brutal than kind of what Stu had. And, he was still running around after that, and it was just after the TV fell on his head, that's what finally killed him. So there's that little, and she says, I saw this in a scary movie one time. I did appreciate that nod to the original film too. But that's kind of my thoughts on that whole situation there. It's Ethan, I think, definitely got a little bit more fucked up, specifically just with that stab to the throat, because it's you get stabbed in the mouth like that, most people are going to be dead. You're not popping up, for one last reel. So I think that's the biggest difference there. That was a death blow because of what injury he sustained right before that. So outside, afterwards, we end up finding out that Gail and Mindy are okay. Mindy ends up showing up to the scene, and she is just, bouncing around. She says something along the lines oh, I'm all hopped up on drugs. But I was like, I don't know, man. You just got stabbed in the stomach, a couple times, twisted around. Even if you were given some drugs, I don't think you would be bouncing around like that, but whatever, was able to overlook that a little bit. So Mindy survived. We find out that Gail's alive as well. And then you get a moment where you think that Chad is dead, but then he gets his Dewey moment, I should say, where you hear, oh, we got another one, and you find out that Chad's alive. And I was like, wait, what? What? And I swear to God, Chad and Tara, they do make the perfect couple, because these past two films, both of them have been stabbed up like pincushions, and somehow they're still alive. I know a lot of people are saying it's the plot armor, and yeah, you can definitely see that. I can understand if people have the complaints about that. But at the same time, I've grown to love these characters, so I don't want them to die, so I was happy that Chad was still alive. But I could totally understand if you have that gripe with the movie where it's these characters would probably be dead after something like that. But then, right before the movie ends, the music starts playing with Still Alive by Demi Lovato, which is a banger, by the way. I've never been a fan of Demi Lovato, and I have been listening to that track nonstop on repeat. But anyways, we get this one last moment where Sam, she takes out her father's Ghostface mask, and this ominous music starts playing, and she's just kind of looking at that. Again, are we going to see that play out? Is she going to become Ghostface? Some people have been theorizing. She looks at it, though, and then Tara asks her if she's coming. She takes the mask and tosses it on the ground. Is someone going to end up picking that up? Who knows what they're going to do with that storyline, but I am very curious to see how that plays out. Does that signify that she's maybe past that now? I don't think so, but I'm definitely curious to see what happens with that. So that's the end of the film. Oh, there is a post-credit scene, which I know some people are like, oh, really? We stayed for that? But the post-credit scene is where Mindy, she says, not every movie has to have a post-credit scene. I thought that was pretty funny, just where it's, with the Marvel films and stuff like that, so many people have gotten used to staying till the very end of the credits. So I thought that was a funny joke for me personally, but again, I can understand if some people are annoyed by that. But yeah, that is my Scream VI spoiler breakdown Easter egg discussion thing. I know this is a very long video. Even after I edit this all, it's probably going to be still very long. So if you guys have managed to stick around for the whole thing, I commend you. I know this is really late and getting this up a lot later than I wanted to. We just had a snowstorm, so I was going to try and do it last night. Didn't have the time. So I apologize. Didn't get this up sooner. Again, it's probably going to be something that I'm sure is going to get buried in the algorithm. So if any of you guys, if you don't mind, if you could share it with your friends, family, things like that, give the video a thumbs up. It'll really help because I'm sure it's not going to get a ton of views. But I just love this movie so much that it's something that I really don't care as much like about the views as I just want to do this for me. I want to get this video out there, and I hope some of you guys enjoyed my breakdown and just my discussion and thoughts on some of the things that happened in this movie. So if you did, again, it'd be really cool if you guys could give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And yeah, again, if you have seen the movie, I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on all the things that happened in the movie, any theories, thoughts, Easter eggs that, I didn't mention in here. And just because I didn't mention them doesn't mean like I didn't notice them necessarily. It's just that, like I said, if I would have listed every single Easter egg, I would have to probably have it on Blu-ray or whatever so I could pause it and go through. And otherwise the video would be really, really long. It already is. So anyways, I'll stop blabbering, now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.